Let's get into our first discussion of the morning. Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index report for 2021 ranks Nigeria 154 out of 180 countries. This ranking puts Nigeria on 24 points, dropping 1 point in scores and down 5 places compared to the previous year on the list. Kemi Balogun gives us a background to this.
Nigeria seems to be falling deeper into the web of corruption, as this Transparency International Corruption Perception Index report suggests. The war against corruption is far from over despite numerous efforts by governments and some state actors. The latest report ranks Nigeria at 154, going down 5 places from the previous ranking at 149.
As we have seen clearly, corruption in Nigeria has helped to underdeveloped Nigeria. It has also helped expose Nigerians to a serious security risk and danger.
In October last year, the government had set up a committee to review the previous rankings in order to find ways of beating this downward trend in corruption indices, which needs a fast and transparent approach to addressing the challenges fueling corruption.
The systemic corruption in the Nigeria police force has sadly continued unabated, and with the police at the front line of Nigeria's criminal justice system with enormous powers to investigate and prosecute crimes. This weakness puts the country in a bad light.
Corruption enables human rights abuses, and corruption thrives when human rights defenders are silenced. Hence, the Nigerian government must retrace its steps from this dangerous decline and infringement on the fundamental human rights of citizens.
The CPI puts together data from 8 different sources that provides perceptions by country experts and business people on the level of corruption in the public sector. Kemi Balogun, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, joining me in the studio to make sense of all of these is public affairs analyst Dipo Oyewole. Dipo, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
And good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And via Zoom is anti-corruption activist and founder of Follow the Money, Hamzat Lawal. Hamzat, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Great to see you. Right. Now, Dipo, let me start with you in the studio. Now, based on this ranking that came out by Transparency International, in the West African sub-region, Nigeria is the second most corrupt country perceptively from that ranking after Guinea. Talk to us basically, how do we juxtapose this against the fight against corruption, where government of Nigeria keeps assuring Nigerians that they are fighting rigorously against and they are winning the war against corruption? Yet this findings now tells that we're falling deeper into corruption from this report. Talk to us about this.
Well, I'll say that the fight against corruption is an alleged fight against corruption. And I'll say that with one very simple scenario that came to the fore in the last couple of days. 2022 budget, 460 projects were duplicated to the tune of 380 billion naira. Since that report has come out, nobody has taken accountability. Nobody has been held responsible for it. We're carrying on as business as usual. And we're saying that we're fighting corruption. Enough is enough. We need to start talking to ourselves in very clear terms. We're not serious about fighting corruption, and until we understand that corruption does kill, and I don't mean that it just kills the fabric of society or it kills the morals or the values, but it literally kills people. Until we understand that fact and put it in those clear terms, we will keep having these conversations every other day. I'll give you an example of how corruption will kill an entire nation. News report came up well before we came on this session, 3 trillion naira for subsidy. And then I just talked about 380 billion naira. 380 billion naira. Do you know what that will solve in our healthcare? Do you know how many hospitals it will build? Do you know how many pregnant women it will save their lives while giving birth to children? Do you know how many people's lives will be saved? The fight against insecurity. If we pump some of that money into insecurity, into the security of our nation, do we know how much it will save? Insecurity that is costing us lives every single day. So you see how corruption in itself kills people, not just the society or the morals or the fabric of a society. And until we understand that, that is in no clearer terms than that, that is what corruption does to any people. I think we'll keep having these conversations, and I think it is very, very unfortunate that at this stage we're still dancing around this issue of corruption and not handling it as decisively as we should.
All right. Now, Hamzat, from this report, it shows that about 131 countries, many of them on the African continent, did not make progress against corruption in the last decade. And yet, each country talks about the strategy. In fact, some countries have set up anti-corruption agencies and all of that. Why do we, in your analysis, why do we have this kind of trend that seems to stagnate the fight against corruption?
Well, because when you look at the African continent, we have strong men rather than strong institutions. You know, we have institutions that are weak. We have institutions that cannot uphold the rule of law. And let's even look at how did Africa manage COVID-19 resources. Over $50 billion came to the shores of Africa through donation, aid, or some sort of support. And let's even look at our home, Nigeria. I think we didn't do well because a lot of citizens lost trust in how government manage COVID-19 resources. You know, up to now, our government cannot even give us a detailed breakdown of how much money they got, how much money was disbursed, to what government agencies, and how they utilize this money. You know, the last time my organization, Connected Development and Serap, wrote to the Accountant General of the Federation, who at that time responded that 35 billion was accrued to COVID-19 and 30 billion was released. But he didn't tell us who this money was released to and what the remaining 5 billion was going to be used for. And then when you just oppose this amount and what is actually obtainable on the ground in Nigeria, and because after the lockdown was lifted, we sent over 5,000 people to various communities just to collect data on if they actually got palliative and if they got any sort of support from government to cushion the effects. Nothing. So I'm not surprised that Nigeria is doing badly on the Transparency Index report, because when you talk to every average Nigerian, they do not see our government fighting corruption. They don't even have that feeling. Mind you, again, it's about perception, but when you look at data and you interview 10 people, out of those 10 people, 9 will tell you, well, they don't even know about any fight against corruption. It's just a lip service that government is providing. Because I'm pretty sure, the fight against COVID-19 really influenced this report at this time.
Okay. All right. Now, I like the way Hamza said, well, it's just perception. But however, the point there is, how far from the facts are these perceptions? If we have to draw the lines and connect them against the realities of the everyday feeling, and like you were talking about the deprivation that corruption, causes when it comes to health, education, infrastructure, and all of that. How far away from these perceptions can we say they are from the reality and facts?
Not very far at all. I mean, like we say in branding, perception is reality. So, I mean, for you to have a perception about something, it is usually informed by certain data points. If you see someone and then you have a certain perception about them, or you size them up in a certain way, even without having a conversation with them, there are certain things that you had looked, certain factors, certain data points that you had considered to come up with that initial assessment. Now, maybe after having a conversation with them, then you can maybe change your mind in a certain direction. But in this case, I'm afraid that it is what you see. What you see is what you get, unfortunately. Because I was going to also talk about the funds for COVID, like Hamzat said, and it is quite unfortunate that up until now, we still don't have any credible accounting whatsoever from the government saying that it was how much we got, it was how much we spent and how it was spent. Because we keep hearing that, X amount of money was given to certain people in cash, certain people got certain foodstuffs, and certain things were built which we know that there were just tents and face masks given out, and they go into the tune of billions. Can we be serious about something for once? Can we say enough is enough with corruption? Can we take these monies and say that we want to improve the lives of people? Because I think it is very irresponsible. I think we need to say these things. It is very irresponsible that we mismanage funds of this magnitude, and then every other month we say we want to borrow billions of naira, billions of dollars from different sources. At whose expense? At whose expense? We can't even service our debts properly annually. Funding the budget is a problem, and we keep doing this year on year. So where do we believe that we're going as a nation? What direction? Are our leaders even being deliberate about setting a particular course for us to go in this nation, understanding that this issue of corruption is a deep-rooted issue that is just not sustainable? It's really just not sustainable. There's no other way to put it. It's a different thing if we say that maybe it's bad, it's immoral, but it's really just not sustainable. We can't keep complaining that we're broke and then we have a steady culture of mismanaging funds. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It makes no sense. And I don't know how we have really gotten to this level of poor governance in Nigeria, where this is now the order of the day. I mean, I'll say it again, the issue with duplicating projects in the budget. So the question now is, what was the whole point of the back and forth between the executive and the legislature when all those things couldn't be identified allegedly? What was the whole point of that? Is it just to say that, okay, you know what, this is what I want in it, this is what you want in it, okay, let's see how we can compromise. 400. If we were to calculate all the projects to cost an even amount, we're looking at $800 million per project. Now, if we're going to analyze all those projects, what you get to hear is, oh, they're sinking 2 boreholes somewhere. And then the 2 boreholes that are sunk, one doesn't have a pumping machine, the other one doesn't have an overhead tank for $800 million. Why are we acting this way? Does this make any sense whatsoever? We have healthcare, we have education. They've been able to keep a lot of people uneducated and weaponize poverty because of elections. Where are we going with this? It's really not sustainable. Can we wake up and say that we want a Nigeria that is relevant on the African continent and relevant in the affairs of in the global community? This is really, really not sustainable. It doesn't make any sense. You don't even run a barbering salon the way you run Nigeria, because in the end you have to go back to your village because you go bankrupt. So can we have a sense of responsibility that they are responsible for the lives of over 200 million people, both home and abroad? Because all these things, they affect us in various ways. You have different stories. I have personal stories as well. There's a particular project I'm trying to get done in the US for like 7 years. Before I could get one organization to take me seriously, it took me 40 emails. Because unfortunately, and proudly speaking, in my email signature, you see my name, my phone number, Lagos, Nigeria. And immediately they saw Lagos, Nigeria, you just shut it down. So I kept complaining to a friend of mine who lives in the US, and then I sent him a draft of the email. The first thing he said was, remove your address. Your name, they may not get to know where you're from exactly.
But you're still Nigerian.
But I'm still Nigerian.
The point there is you can't take that away.
You can't take that away. But
because if anybody is going to commit to anything, they need to know the details of all of these. So
at first contact, saying my name, they may say, okay, he's from Africa. Okay, let's engage him. Then maybe at second contact, okay, I'm Nigerian. Then they pull back, not at the first instance. Right. But these things affect us in various ways.
Yeah, these are the consequences of all of that, one way or the other. Now, Hamza, the point there is, Nigerians seem to be sometimes uncomfortable with the engagement between, or lessons learned from some of these indexes that come out, or indices that come out sometimes. We remember the government of Nigeria many times don't agree with this reports. In fact, several times when it came out last year, and each time these reports come out, government is always debunking and always criticizing the outcome of this. Recall that in 2014, when this government was campaigning, the outcome or the report of the Corruption Perception Index was one item that was used to push vigorously against the anti-corruption fight against the previous government, and Nigerians bought into it. So talk to us what you make of this government's refusal to accept that these are the issues. Let's sit down, let's learn from this, and let's make a way forward.
As a data analyst, you can always reject, data or public opinion as submitted, but I had expected the Nigerian government to reject it using a counter narrative. So if you say you're fighting corruption, so what are the impacts of the corruption you've been fighting, and how are you mobilizing and educating citizens to join in the fight against corruption? And I'm glad that you brought 2015. We're going into 2023 general elections. And I think that, Nigeria would use the last 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari-led anti-corruption government to judge the APC as a political machinery and say, for the past 4 years, how have you met this commitment and deliverables that are used in bringing you into office? And hopefully this time the Nigerian people will be more wiser to engage during town hall meeting and during political rallies, because as a people, we must all ask ourselves as a country, what exactly do we want? You see, my brother just talked about how perception affects individuals, institutions, and even well-meaning Nigerians who want to do business with the world. It affects us because the world is a global village where the first thing people would want to go and research about is what is the corruption perception of your country. So again, I believe that the mantle still falls back to the Nigerian people. I think that we should, go out and get registered, and I'm glad that INEC is still undergoing continuous voters registration. Get registered, collect your permanent voters card, but most importantly, engage in the political process. There's going to be a series of town hall meetings. Politicians who want to take all of us to the moon, and some of them have never seen inside of an aeroplane. So how are you ensuring that you're able to sieve those lies and continue to engage, but most importantly, document those promises, and after they're elected into office, you hold them to account? Because for us to win the war against corruption, we must continue to invest in institutions. So today, for instance, we don't even have a solid regime on audit. So you budget money, you release money, you spend money, but yet over 200 MDAs have not submitted their audit report. And for some that have submitted their audit report, there's gross corruption happening in some of these MDAs. And what baffles me is, why is the National Assembly not calling for a public hearing, particularly the Committee on Public Accounts? The reason why you're the chairman and you're members of committees of public accounts is to call for public hearing and bring these people to come and give you an account of how public resources have been utilized. So again, I don't know if this is a collusion between, the executive and the legislative arm, because we cannot understand why the National Assembly, who is supposed to be the People's Assembly, is not holding the executive to account. Are we truly a democratic republic that actually embraces the separation of power? Because you cannot fight corruption and then be on the same page with the executive. I believe that the National Assembly have to rise to the occasion. But I also believe this is an opportunity for civil society organizations. We must continue to sensitize people. We must continue to mobilize people to demand for justice, because anti-corruption is injustice. When public resources are not being put to public use, it means millions of children will continue to be out of school. You would go to the hospital and die just because there is no vaccine or because there is no oxygen, because somebody has diverted or embezzled that resources. So this is a collective effort that affects all of us, be it rich or poor, because when the roads are not done, even if you're a big man in your SUV, because of a pothole, you can lose your life. So it's a collective effort for everyone. But just imagine a Nigeria where there's no corruption, where there's access to education, access to healthcare, potable drinking water, access to road, decent jobs, and economic growth. Just imagine a Nigeria like that. The world will be proud of us, but most importantly, we'll be proud of ourselves, and the world will take us more seriously, because right now we're just a laughing stock in the global community.
All right. If you see on the African continent, some of the countries with the cleanest reports, Seychelles is the cleanest so far, followed by Botswana, and then Mauritius, and then Rwanda, and then Namibia. No, in that order. Now, these are all countries that have sat down to study Nigeria. Nigeria, great country, Nigeria, powerful country, Nigeria. What can we learn from how Nigeria is working and all of that? now we may have to sit down and study what they're doing right one way or the other. So if we have to look at all of these, sitting down to look at, okay, what do we, even if we don't have to voice it because of our ego and pride, we have to sit down to say, okay, fine, let's silently close the doors, close the windows, and let's look at this and that. What can we learn from these countries?
First thing we need to learn is deliberate leadership, which is something that would be required here in the first place to say we want to learn anything out there. So I'm not sure which one comes first, chicken or the egg, because these people didn't get there by chance. They didn't get there by mistake. They were deliberate about creating a society where there is minimal corruption, because frankly speaking, there's corruption everywhere, but it hasn't eaten deeply into the fabric of their society. It's deliberate leadership to say that this is where we want our nation to be. This is how we want to be known. These nations that you have mentioned, Rwanda, Mauritius, these are places where when you go there, you then have to ask yourself if you're still on the same continent. It didn't happen. It didn't happen overnight. This is a function of deliberate leadership and visionary leadership, something that will be grossly lacking here in Nigeria. That's why I said earlier that the question is, do we have leaders that can set a path, that can chart a course, that in the next couple of years, this is where we want this nation to be, this is how we want to be known, this is what we want to be known for, and how do we get there? Part of how we will get anywhere tangible or anywhere progressive is addressing the issue around corruption. It is just not sustainable. It kills every fabric of every society. It is really just not sustainable. So yes, that's the first place we need to start from. There's no point going with a list if we can't even get number one right. So I think that is what we need to hammer on. And once we're able to get that right, that we have deliberate and visionary leadership, they are the ones that will then say, okay, you know what are the other factors that we need to look at to see how we can adopt those things that other nations are doing around the world. All these places we have mentioned, all our government officials go to all of these places. Dubai Expo, our government officials were there last year. Some of them were still there this year. You go to all of those places, you see what they're doing.
In fact, Rwanda is a great destination now.
Fantastic destination.
For business on the African continent, you know, is a hub now where you want to meet East African businessmen, Southern African businessmen, North African businessmen. You go to Rwanda, you see everything.
And like you said, before they were looking to Nigeria, and up until, I believe, 6-7 years ago, I mean, I had also had a few conversations with folks from those parts of the continent where they're asking that, why is Nigeria holding us back? Because everyone was looking to us for leadership. But when they saw that we weren't serious about it, they went about charting their own course and going about their way. And look at where they are today. So we need to be very serious about this issue of nation building and positioning ourselves in the community of nations.
All right, we have to leave it here now. Of course, one would say all hope is not lost. If you also check the ratings, Nigeria is the startup capital of the African continent, one way or the other. Anyway, these are all a product of people's individual efforts here and there. So it tells that we can leverage on some of these things to still move on. Now, Hamzat Lawal, thank you so much for your time on the program this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Dick Boyewole, thank you very much for coming as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.